Good evening, everybody. So glad to be here with you all. Another wonderful evening, and we have Kip and Watchful with us. Wanted to say hey to everybody. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. We're the end of pushing a deadline, so hopefully it's a much nicer month going ahead, so that I can have some time to work on our website and our mobile app, get that thing going.
Kip, how about you?
I'll tell you what, I'm at Mach 10 with my hair on fire and still ended up with so much left over to finish tomorrow.
Awesome.
Well, you still got some hair left. First thing I was going to touch on is I was going to mention what Watchful just said. We are in the process of working on the website and building that, and we have an app in the works as well. Not sure of the timeline just yet because those things are complex and he's a perfectionist, so it will determine on several factors, but just wanted to plant that seed with you guys. Also, we have that other channel here on YouTube that we're trying to build. It's essentially just the news segments from our shows. So for folks that are in the chat and watching this in the future, like and subscribe to that other channel. You'll see the link in the description. To touch on the news before we go into Kip's topic, the border convoy, it still seems to be en route, but after doing some digging and investigating on this, I'm going to, if anybody in that border convoy is watching, I'm going to recommend that you guys stay away from there. I really do. Governor Abbott and his National Guard seems like they've sealed that place up tight. The crossings have almost come to a screeching halt. I would hate to see a false flag or whatever you want to call it, a black flag event happen simply just because of that's just how they are on the other side. They're sneaky like that. So if I would, it seems like things are under control right now in that area. I wouldn't rock the boat. I understand folks want to be supportive, and I totally get that. Though I wouldn't give the opposition the opportunity to seize on the moment, because don't think they won't. You know, it's... And that being said, if something did happen, you know, the first thing that would happen is comms would go down because they would want to create fear and confusion. It's important that you have some type of backup set up in place for communications. Just say hypothetically, if something like that did happen, you wouldn't know who the good guys from the bad guys were. Everybody would be in uniform, and you would be totally in the dark. So think about how you will communicate if something like that did happen. And this is not to fearmonger. It's just prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Hopefully nothing happens. Pray to the Lord that it doesn't.
Yeah.
But if something did, it would be very difficult to determine who your enemy is. And really the only way that you could at least create some sense of reality is by communicating with the outside world. There will be no cell phones when something like this happens. The grid will be completely shut off because they'll shut the comms down. I've seen it before in other parts of the world. Dr. Sean Greener can tell you all about the strategies of warfare and blinding your enemy. So it is important. I honestly feel that. What's your guys' thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think we tend to imagine the worst, and it tends to be something completely different than what we imagine, like you were saying. But, you know, considering that I personally feel like we're getting close to the start of the Great Tribulation, we may be underestimating it in this scenario. It could be way worse than what we're expecting.
It could also be way better than what we're anticipating, just like we were talking about offline. You know, there is always a chance that... Let me back up a second. It seems like everybody's anticipating the worst. And things, if you look through history, the way events have unfolded, they typically catch everybody off guard. What if the election actually did happen and a new administration came into power and we had a grand revival and peace fell on the land and that man made peace with all the enemies? There is a chance of that happening. Everybody is anticipating something awful to unfold in 2024. What if it didn't?
Yeah.
All we can do is speculate.
That's the whole really cool thing about God is through his prophets. Everybody always says, oh, the prophets brought bad news. We hate the prophets. They just bring bad news. No, they brought a choice. They always brought a choice. And because the people chose poorly, they got the judgment. They got punished. But we are being given a choice right now here in America. And when we talk about the eclipses, the 3 eclipses and the Revelation 12 sign next week or the week after, I will show you what that choice is. But we're always given a choice. And we can choose well or we can choose poorly. And God changes his mind. Read the Old Testament over and over again. He changed his mind and gave mercy where he said, nope. But it took prayer. Moses had to throw himself on the mercy of God because God was like, I'm going to wipe these people out. They're stiff-necked. I'm done with them. I'm just going to start over with you, Moses. Moses was like, no. And so he changed his mind. The Lord can change his mind. We are the ones to change it because he loves us. And because we have influence over his heart.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Well,
he did change his
looking
mind.
For if we're not raptured out of here, if we do go through something like this, I'm hoping that it's going to be a good time to where we're unkillable and we have power and authority to have fun.
That would be nice. I saw a question in the chat from, let's see who was that. Anyways, the question is with the radio I have behind me. Yes, that stuff my stuff runs on solar, but it doesn't require solar. They run on 12-volt systems, and they're completely independent from the grid. They reflect off the ionosphere and come back down to different parts of the world depending on the time of day, because the ionosphere, depending on the time of day, will be closer to Earth or further away from Earth. And there's lots of channels like Ham Radio, Crash Radio, I think it's Ham Radio Crash Course on YouTube, a friend of mine, and he's got all the information you need that you can learn from this. This is technology they've been using for over 100 years. This is not new tech. Mm-hmm. The radios are somewhat new tech because they're fancy with their digital displays, but the propagation technology is extremely old school. This goes back to Morse code. Essentially, the propagation, the radio signal leaves, it reflects off the atmosphere and comes back down. So it's a global communication system that anyone that investigates on how to use can use. It's really not rocket science. It sounds technical, but it's not. So,
and you can even do Morse code. I got my little Morse code tapper right here. It's still highly valid as a means of communication. A lot of these radios will actually translate Morse code into actual text on the screen.
Yeah, they've gotten to the point where you can actually set up data communications between these radios. Meaning you can have your quote own somewhat private internet signal between radios, because it will actually transmit data back and forth. So you can email and text message and Morse code between these radios, and that's completely independent from the grid. The only thing that you will be required to produce is your own electricity. But these radios, since they run on 12 volt, it's very easy to supply power through solar. You can use a car battery. There's tons of different options. I have 2 solar panels out back that run my radio system. But
you can get set up for pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Somebody asked how much is it to get set up. We got me set up with a high frequency radio so that I can transmit around the world for under $500, and then you can get local communication for as cheap as $25.
Yeah, there's Baofeng makes handheld radios that you can find on Amazon for $20. They're 2-meter communications, meaning they're line of sight, and you can talk within a few miles of your home on the little rubber ducky antenna, where they actually have larger antennas for the home for that bandwidth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like one of these little guys.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. But really the point of
how-to show on this.
Yeah, we've had requests to talk about this. I just Not sure that all our viewers are going to be interested in this, and if they are, I could be wrong. We'll go into it. I'm just not sure how it can tie it into, preaching the
Special
gospel.
broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out. But there's a lot of options out there, and I just wanted to mention that because communications is important. Matter of fact, everybody in our network, I have a designated frequency that my radio stays tuned into, meaning if comms go down, my father in Middle Tennessee or Watchful on the West Coast, we already have a designated frequency that would be able to reach each other. So there would be no second guessing to it. You would just have these pre-set up frequency channels, and you'd be able to tune in and communicate. And it's I find it fun. My father was a ham radio guy once he was 16, and so I kind of grew up with it. But there's a lot of information out there and tons of YouTube channels that can tell you all about this and how to do it. You can put it in your truck, your car, your house. But anyways, let's move along. Just don't get hung up on that. So one other piece of news that I found was interesting is euthanasia for children have now been approved in Canada. It's
That's heartbreaking.
It is. And they approved it without the parents' consent.
Wow.
Guys, if you
your kid is sad or your kid is angry, and they can go to a teacher or they can go to whoever they want and say, I really want to die, and those people will help them.
Yeah. And guys, if you really want to get an idea of what our country will look like if the current administration stays in power, look at where Canada's at right now. That's a reflection point. They are a few years ahead because of their political system and their taxes, and they have a rogue regime. And don't take my word for it. Ask anybody that lives in Canada. Anybody. I have a lot of friends in Canada. I'm sure we got folks in the audience from Canada. It's out of control. It's and I would never thought we'd be talking about Canada in a negative light because, over the years, it just seemed like that place that has more than one language and a fun vacation spot if you like the snow and whatnot, Montreal and stuff of that nature. But I feel bad for folks there. So it's really sad. Another talking point.
If you have a child who's sad, if a child or even a friend who's sad, that's not the way. I actually know quite a few people who have contemplated and even attempted suicide, and they had their reasons, but sometimes it was spiritual intervention that stopped them. Sometimes it was a friend. It's so evil that a government would actually facilitate this so that somebody could actually make a choice that can't be undone. And I know a lot of people who have considered that choice, and they're so thankful today that they never went through with it. It's a tragedy that they're actually making this easy and making it an option for people.
Yeah, so this is new. I saw a comment that said they didn't know that Canada had offered this. This is brand new, coming out of their whatever their Congress is called. I'm not sure what the technical term is, but this is something
program MAID, and it's assisted suicide. And one of the things that they're doing with it, they've actually been doing it for a couple of years now.
For
but
children?
they are expanding, no, not to children, but for adults. And it started out for people who were seriously ill. And now there's all kinds of, because again, LifeSite News, I read Canadian news every day. And LifeSite News has been reporting on it for a couple of years now. And what they're doing now is, if you're disabled and you can't get into the medical system and you're just frustrated, well, you'll get a letter. If you complain, you'll get a letter offering you suicide.
Wow.
Because,
really?
Well, you can't get into, yes, that's happened several times. It's actually pretty crazy. You don't need to have any doctors or mental health professionals give you any kind of a analysis. Nothing. You can just say, I don't want to live anymore. And especially if you're poor, man, they love to go after the poor. So too poor to pay your bills. well, here's your letter in the mail. We'd love to help you commit suicide.
That's the WEF,
Thank
I'm
you.
telling you. The
Thank
WEF
you,
wants
Jessica.
to, they want to depopulate,
Yeah.
so wherever the WEF has their spider webs embedded. There was a video that I shared with the group for the show in our private chat that there was a gentleman that went to Davos, acted as a WEF member, so he was just kind of one of them. And I think the video already got taken down, but I was able to watch it. Anthony in the chat shared it with me, and it was an eye-opener. They are brazen because they have their defenses down there, because it's in an area where the average person just can't walk into this. So everybody in this little town and at this conference, they're all there for the same reason. So no one's protecting concepts or ideas. And again, Anthony in the chat, he shared it with me. Thanks, Anthony. It was an eye-opener. It's what they have planned for the world if they were allowed to go without being controlled. It's definitely the B system, 100%. It was an eye-opener. I'll see if I can find another link that will work on that. But, yeah. So, White House wants to replace Kamala Harris, they're talking about. They had an inside source talk to a reporter that this slipped out. They're scared to announce this because she's the first black female vice president. But they're somewhat panicking because Biden's health is in a steep decline, and they don't think Kamala Harris would be able to run the show. They didn't go into too much detail on this, but why do you think they would want to get her off the ticket so quickly if that was the case?
Seems to me like she's not part of this beast system because, my opinion, I think we're getting ready to go into the Great Tribulation. And I think that they don't want her as part of it. They want somebody else in there that they can control, or just somebody else in their period.
Yeah. I saw a comment that said birth rates are already in decline. Of course. Why do you think the powers that be push the trans agenda so hard? They can adopt, but they can't procreate. You have to read between the lines. It's not because they even care about these people. It's all designed around the WEF system of depopulation. So what you have is they put all their support behind the pride agenda, and no offense to folks that, same-sex couples, whatnot. I have a lot of gay friends, and a lot of them are really, really cool people. So I don't try to associate some of my friends with some of the crazy agendas that you see online within the hateful trans community. So I try not to associate those two. But the bottom line is they can't procreate. So that's my personal thoughts on why they really get behind it, because what better way? And that's why they offer sex reassignment surgery and stuff of that nature, because they're killing the birth rate. The birth rate's in decline. They want less people, 100%.
Yeah. Well, and on a supernatural level, the devil knows that he can attack and he can win if you don't know your identity. If you don't know who you are and you don't know whose you are, he will win. And what greater way to confuse somebody and poke your finger in God's eye than to tell a girl that you're a boy and a boy that you're a girl and have them believe that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Classic tactic of Satan. Deception, division. I mean, the history's riddled with it.
Yeah. Just very similar to Sodom and Gomorrah in the days of Noah.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to do a show on that, because I've been doing a lot of digging on that time period, specifically Sodom and Gomorrah, especially since they are confident that they found the location of that event. That is really fascinating. I think I shared something on our social media page where they found a homosexual couple bound together, dying from the blast. And one reason they were able to pinpoint and confirm its location is because there was sand that was turned into glass from extreme heat. And try to help you understand that. In an area that has a somewhat of a nuclear blast, the heat exchange is so massive that it turns sand to glass, and it has to be really hot to do that. But that'd be a great topic for another day if you guys are interested in hearing about Sodom and Gomorrah, because that was really, really, the story is fascinating. Really fascinating story.
Yeah, it's one of the records where that we look to identify what angels look like, because based on the descriptions of the angels that came in to save Lot and his wife and his family, they were men. The men of the town thought that they were men, and Lot even brought them into his home and shared a meal with them. So they weren't alien grays or anything like that. It's one of those records that we look to kind of get an idea of what angels can look like. Whether they all look like that, I don't know, but that is one of the records where we look to for what they can look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how long we've been on the news, but I have a few more things, or we can move on to Kip's topic. It's up to you guys.
I don't think we have a time limit tonight, do we?
Nah, no.
Yeah.
All right, so one more, and I got a lot of stuff because we've had a pretty active news, but I'll touch on one more thing, and I'll save the rest for the next show. So, our current administration undermined border security 64 times since they've been in office. And I'm not going to read through all of them, but there is a laundry list. Like January 20th, 2021, President Biden terminated the national emergency border proclamation that was put forth by Trump, essentially halting construction of the border wall. But there was 64 times that our current administration undermined border security intentionally. So, and I mentioned this to
Pierre says every time she's asked about it, the border is secure. I don't know why I have to tell you, the border is secure, she says every time.
She is the worst White House press secretary I've ever seen. That's got to be the hardest job in the world, to be the front face and have to willingly lie with a straight face without laughing to protect a rogue administration that is not out for our better interest. But you can see it all over her face.
Yeah.
So it's what I was thinking, though, and I mentioned this to you guys off the air, is I have a different theory that I heard on the Tim Pool show about why they're letting in all the migrants. And when he said it on his show, what'd you say, sir? Did you say something?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. What he said made a lot of sense to me. So they are preparing, pretty much everybody, they are preparing for war. It seems like that's a given. That's an obvious. They don't have the ranks. They don't have the staff or the manpower to back up what they're doing. So instead of using the migrants for war in our own country for our patriots, they know that folks are not going to sign up, and security of their hometown and their beachfront property all depends on whether the war is won. So they need these people to fight all these overseas wars. They don't have the manpower currently. What do you think about that? Maybe?
I don't know. With the signs and the stars and what's going on, I think that we're, my opinion, I think we're going into the Great Tribulation. And I think the 10 million people that have come across our border are going to be used to start that Great Tribulation. I'm expecting confrontations to be on the rise. I'm expecting them to make choke points on food. So what is it? I think I heard today that there's less than 20 days of diesel. And the supply chain is going to take a dramatic dip here very soon. So I can imagine that, I don't know if Americans would turn against Americans and prevent Americans from getting access to food. but I could see migrants being used to prevent people from getting access to food. So I almost wonder if that's not part of the situation, to where you have to agree to something in order to get fed.
Yeah, that's all a part of WEF's agenda. That's Bill Gates is highly involved in that. They are attempting to shut down farms all over the world. But here's the thing that they didn't anticipate, is that their farmers and society is pushing back. They underestimated the resilience of the body of good people, and especially the body of Christ. How we band together when times start to get tough. I think they definitely underestimated that, and they're trying to get their heads around that. You can see it in their media publications saying they're trying to earn back the trust of the American people. They want to rein in misinformation, and essentially they want to stranglehold the truth, which is why they went after Russell Brand, tried to silence him. What happened to Tucker Carlson? There's plenty of examples like this. You could go down the list of people they've tried to silence. And what they don't realize is they're only making those voices stronger because it shows their true intentions. So they're in quite the pickle.
Well, it's funny because people have been known to be more, in America, we fight for freedom and we have this vim and this vigor that those places are missing. They are mostly a society, especially of men, who do what they're told. And right now that ain't working. It ain't flying in Denmark. It ain't flying in Germany. It ain't flying in France, and certainly not in Canada as those truckers, rose up. And that's why I'm happy to see our truckers go down there. I'm not, very sure how this whole thing is going to unfold. I want them to be careful, sure, but I love the fact that I don't think that anyone was expecting us to rise up. Our votes don't count. Our votes don't count anymore. So we've got to do something to rise up. And if it's a trucker's convoy, or if it's spraying manure on the
right
on the buildings in Germany, at least people are doing something. At least the elites know we are standing up to them, because the demonic realm has to have your permission. They absolutely believe they have to have your permission to unleash hell on you. And if you didn't do anything about it, if you just ignored it, or you just didn't understand it, well, then that's on you. They absolutely believe that if they get your permission, they will not be held responsible by God. Well, I don't think they know God at all. I think he's, he will hold them responsible.
He will.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the fact that all these people are standing up and saying no. And as far as the Tim Pool thing, we have been offering citizenship through the armed forces throughout the border invasion, which hasn't just been recent. It's been going on for years now. And we've gotten very little out of it. These people are not coming over here to fight a war for us at all. They are here to replace us, and they know it, and we know it.
Can I show you something that I kind of hit me today when I was reading in Revelation that might actually support the idea of an uprising like we're talking about?
Where in Revelation?
This could be. So let's start in Revelation 11 and in 3. This is the section about the two witnesses. I want to show you something that I'm kind of curious about your guys' input and opinion on this. So I'm going to read this. I'm going to go from 3 to 6. We're not going to read
Revelations 11:3.
Yeah, 11:3.
Okay.
And it says, "And I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands standing before the God of the earth." The reason I think that it's two groups is because of the two lampstands right there. In Revelation 1:20, the lampstands are defined as churches. "And if anyone wants to harm them, fire proceeds from their mouth and devours their enemies. And if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this manner." So let's stop there. And now let's go look at the two beasts in Revelation 13. this hit me today, and I think there's a link here with the two witnesses. And if you go down to, let's start in 7. So 13:7. It was granted to him, this is the first beast, to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear to hear, let him hear. Now, this is the part I want you to pay attention to. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. That reminds me of the two witnesses. If we go back to this section in 5, if anyone wants to harm them, fire proceeds from their mouth and devours their enemy. And if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this manner. Do you guys see that correlation too?
Yeah.
Or is that just me?
No, I see it.
That's where I'm kind of wondering if the two witnesses aren't a group, aren't Smyrna and Philadelphia, basically those people who have nothing to repent from, who are the witnesses of God and his Lamb, if they're not the ones who receive some kind of power and authority and may potentially even be unkillable. So,
What if it is?
That kind of got me thinking. We were talking about what if there is what's that?
I said I volunteer
What was
as
that, kid?
tribute. I volunteer as tribute to be one of them.
Yeah, so I mean that just every time we're talking about what if it's not, what if the Great Tribulation isn't really against us? What if it's the gathering of the tares and burning the tares? What if that's the Great Tribulation?
Yeah. My position is I take the book literally. I understand where you're coming from, and you very well could be right. But, that could be ignorant on my behalf just because, it's sometimes the book is not literal, but just that feeling I have. But you could be totally right. It could be something
Well, I mean,
like that.
it's to your point of like, what if Trump gets in office? What if there is a big uprising? And what if, we're not afraid for our lives, but we're the ones that are actually fighting back?
Yeah, your point about it being the two olive trees and the two lampstands, that's a really good support for your concept, though, because that's essentially referencing the church or one of the churches. Huh.
Yeah.
What do you guys think in the chat?
What got my attention was that in Revelation 13, where he who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. It's that same dynamic with the if you try to kill the two witnesses, you must be killed in the way that you try to kill them.
Yeah. So that would mean
Well,
that...
as far as tares, I'm looking at Matthew 13:39, and it says, the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and those who practice lawlessness. So you've got a point. Although the angels are the reapers, it doesn't say the burners. It says they're the reapers.
Stephanie asked, "What are the tares?"
Well, what if the angels are the enforcers? So if anyone tries to harm those who are sealed, the angels. So like if you try to kill, maybe that's what makes them unkillable. If someone tries to kill you, the angels are authorized to kill that person. That would be so trippy. Could you imagine? That would be a trip.
Supernatural things have been happening. No one can deny that. Yeah. And it is clear in the Bible that there will be great signs and wonders and many, many things. There will be supernatural events that will be unexplainable to science. And
that would embolden people to speak up. Imagine the first time someone just, not to be gruesome, someone tries to hack your head off, and then suddenly they get their head hacked off. I mean, could you imagine how that would embolden you to just speak up and declare the end and, declare, choose you this day whom you serve? Wow.
Well, and wouldn't that make them those other people hate us. I mean, hate us so bad that when we, the witnesses, are killed, not just the 2 witnesses, but all the witnesses are killed and taken up into heaven, that they would have a party and give gifts.
Exactly my point, because they're going to torment the world. They're going to hate them because nobody can kill them. And then finally they get to kill them. And then they have a party. Wow.
And it would also, and I know that there's TV, I know that there's satellites, but it would also check the box on that the whole world can see these 2 witnesses. Because there are believers everywhere.
I'm under the, for me, I don't see it as the end, but just the end of a chapter and a new beginning. And I have to explain that to my children when they ask about this. They're like, Daddy, we don't want to be done. And, it saddens them, but you have to understand that this is not the end of everything. Heaven's going to come to earth. And
that's right.
It's a wonderful time to be alive. Those who have
it's the end of evil.
Those who have their faith in Christ, this is a wonderful time to be alive. Yes, there's going to be persecution and tribulation, but this is an incredible time period for humankind. It's not the end. It's the beginning of something incredible.
Yeah, it's nothing to be afraid of.
Well, there was somebody in the chat last night that was talking about how afraid they are of living in the end times. And I just want to encourage you, if you are reticent or afraid, just know this: the best of every bloodline is on the earth for this time. 2/3 of the Bible was written to this time. You were hand chosen to be here for a reason, not because you've been given a spirit of fear. You haven't. The Lord has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And you are the best of your bloodline. So let's go for it.
Yeah.
Amen.
No, that's awesome.
I'm reminded of Matthew 20. I'm reminded of Matthew 24, where he says, "Look up, for your redemption draws nigh." It's a time to be excited.
Yeah. It for me, it is exciting. And I try to explain to my children that when they are concerned and whatnot, when they in Bible study at their youth group, they talk about certain things, and God commands us to not live in fear. Put your faith in Him. He will take care of everything. It's just how it is. He has never let me down. And if you do suffer some type of tribulation or whatnot, just understand there's a reason for that. And some of the worst time periods that I thought at the moment in my life turned out to be one of the best lessons I had ever had. And some really incredible, wonderful things came from those hard times. So it's really important to understand that everything happens for a reason, guys. Everything happens for a reason. All right, I'm going to touch on one more news article so we can start on Kip's presentation. So the New York hospitals are overwhelmed with migrants. I mean, overwhelmed to the point that the hospitals are having to turn away care for American citizens because the migrants actually have priority because of an emergency action up there. And
weird.
Yeah, I struggle to wrap my head around it. So
wacky priorities.
Yeah, and so Americans are requesting help up there also with like rent and assistance and whatnot, and they're being put on the back burner for up to 10 weeks because of the migrant oversaturation. It's essentially taxing the system to death. And I saw those I saw the news articles today that came out about the police officers that were attacked over the week. There's outrage in the community. They released those guys with no consequences, no bail, and unlikely that they'll actually ever see a court date. That's...
Those are those Soros-funded DAs that they put in place for just to do this. It's lawlessness, and actually, Jesus, when he was asked what is the greatest law, what is the greatest command, he said, love God and love your neighbor. So lawlessness is lovelessness. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, well said.
Good point. Yeah.
People's love is growing cold.
That's a fact.
That's right.
I knew a lot of people around 2019, 2020, folks that I've known my whole life, and they went ice cold. And it's a shame.
Yeah.
Some folks that had been very close to me that just went ice cold. And I still try to help.
I had lifelong friends turn into outright enemies. Like, these were people that knew me as a child, who helped nurture me when I was a child, that turned evil. Yeah.
And I've said this before on the show. I think during that 2019, 2020 time period when many felt a shift and many went cold, I still stand behind my concept on that, is that those who had their feet firmly planted with Christ got a boost in their faith. Something happened. You know, it became the center point of your life. Though folks that did not have their feet firmly planted with Christ, those who did not, Satan really dug its claws in, and those folks went cold and are now blinded from reality.
Yeah.
And you can see it every day. Thank you for watching this segment from our live show. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except for the Sabbath period. See you soon.